So here we are at the wonderful Winery Hotel in Stockholm, and today I'm going to be holding a keynote speech for a company called Adapteo. They're one of the leading players within modular housing and building. Thank you. So what you see on the screen right now is a communication between me and Jeffrey on LinkedIn. For those of you who read Swedish can read it. The rest of you, sorry. So I sent Jeffrey 4 years ago, April 2019, I sent him to invite him on LinkedIn to connect. 4 years later, he contacts me to say, do you do things like this? Come and hold a keynote speech. 4 years later. So I call him and we have a chat. And he tells me he's been following me and my company for years. And he acknowledges that he understands the problem that we solve. He also acknowledged that he understood directionally how we solve that problem. And he reached out to me. Now, I haven't met him. I haven't called him. I haven't sent any automated email outreach to him, right? But somehow I have managed over these years to get him to be exposed to my company, which we're not Microsoft, right? To the message that we're trying to get across and the problem that we're solving, right? To a point that he's got so interested that he actually contacts me. How many would love to do that with the stakeholders in your companies? So one of the things that I'm going to talk about today is how do we do that? How do we create this kind of influence in the type of ecosystem that you're operating in? Because it's quite complicated, right? I can't just go to you, I talk to you, and then they buy the modular housing, right? You need to influence cross-hierarchy and cross-functionally, am I right? And this is really hard to do with just human force alone. So I'm going to talk about how to do that. The other thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to share some insights on the research that we've been doing. Everybody, if you just open up these, everyone, there's a book in there. The Mega Deals book. I'm not the author, but my dear friend and colleague Christopher Engman is. He's one of the co-founders of the company. This book is, I really recommend you to read this. It's the research of looking at some of the most high-performing mega dealers in the world, in some of the top companies, and how they orchestrate these large deals. It's the blueprint of how they do. And I'm going to share you some of the insights today. Does that sound interesting?
Yep. Yes. Very much.
All right, let's get cracking then. So this is the agenda. I'm going to be sharing there's a lot of insights that we've gathered, of course, through the research that we've done and our own experiences of doing deals. But there's two really big insights that are, if you experience these two insights in where you're operating, then the discipline that I'm going to talk about is almost a must. The traditional sales and marketing activities don't work as well, right? And I'm going to share that. Secondly, I'm going to go through some of the context and background of the Mega Deals research that you have in the book, and then I'm going to share the 5 cornerstones. The 5 cornerstones are the way that describes how these really high-performing mega dealers actually orchestrate these large deals. I'm going to give you insights to that. And then I'm going to focus a bit on one of the cornerstones, which is driving consensus, creating consensus at scale. That's the hard part. How do I get people like Jeffrey on scale to see my message, to know me, to know my company, right? Without being in their face, without turning them off. And then I'm going to go through the key components of deal orchestration, and then we're going to talk about something called category dominance. So how can you as a business move towards dominating your category and becoming number one. And if we have time, we'll see. We've got some bonus material at the end, but that's only if we have time. And if we get there, John, where are you? Yeah, you will help me with that exercise. We agreed at lunch. Okay. So, So briefly about me, I'm one of the co-founders of Mega Deals. I'm also the CEO running it. All my life has pretty much been in sales. So and in large corporations like American Express and so on. So I've been running all types of sales organizations, but most of my life has been in doing large deals. And I've lost deals and I've won deals. And I've learned from both, probably more from losing deals. I had also a stint where I headed up MoneyGram for the Nordics and the Baltics, but again, most of my life has been around the large deal space. And then a few years ago, I did something I've been wanting to do all my life, but never dared to, and that was start my own company with a group of people, and we just kind of jumped and did it. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. Daniela is my wonderful colleague. She heads up our community and our social media, and she'll be filming a little bit today, so don't worry about her. We create a lot of content, which you'll understand even more when we end today's session. So actually, one thing I do want to say before we kick into the insights, the example I gave with Jeffrey earlier. So for that to work, and we're going to talk more about that, the slogan you had about sales and marketing is absolutely critical. And that's where a lot of organizations go wrong, because they don't understand how to sync sales and marketing when they orchestrate these large deals. All right? And we're going to talk about that. Okay, so let's get to the first key insight. The first key insight. I'm going to share with you 4 conditions. When these 4 conditions are in play, and I'd love to think through these if these are relevant for you, right? The logic for how you sell and market changes. So condition number 1 is you need to anchor decisions in a hierarchy. So it could be the board, it could be the C-suite, middle management, down to the people on the floor, right? So it's not enough for you and me to agree, and the deal is done. You need to anchor decisions. The second one is you need to anchor decisions cross-functionally. So a number of functions that need to say yes before you can get the deal done, right? It could be compliance, it could be tech, it could be sales, it could be etc., right? So far, can you relate to these 2? Is this how your environment works when you're selling into hospitals and schools and stuff? Yeah? Okay. The third is that your offering is quite complex. You can't just bring in some 19-year-old that comes in and kind of, hope there aren't any 19-year-olds in here. You bring in a 19-year-old and they just kind of sell easily, right? It's complex. And also the infrastructure, the environment on the customer side is also quite complex. It could be a mix of hardware, software, and things like this. So when not all of these, maybe some of these are in play, what happens is, as I said, the sales and marketing logic shifts. And you move from what we call selling and marketing to orchestrating. And that's completely different. And we're going to talk about that today. Now, we have come up with one of the best kept secrets and challenges in business that I think we've identified. And we haven't seen a single exception to the rule yet. So if anyone has any, I would really love to talk to you afterwards. And when you have this environment, whether you are the biggest companies in the world or you are scale-ups, you have what we call the rainmaker dependency. So the rainmaker is the salesperson. And there is a high dependency on a few people that actually get these deals done. In the book, in research in the book, Christopher interviewed over 100 Fortune 500 companies and scale-ups. And one of the biggest Swedish companies, actually one of the biggest companies in the world, they had 17 accounts that stood for 80% of their business. 17. Now, they have a commercial organization of 5,000 people, sales, marketing, customer success, etc. I'm going to ask you all a question. Guess, how many individual names had to be involved, if these people weren't involved in the deals wouldn't happen. What do you think? 5,000. How many? Come on, have a guess. Guess. You can do it. No? Come on.
2.
2.
Involved in the deal.
They had to, if they weren't in the deal, these names, if they weren't involved, the deals wouldn't happen. How many? We had 2 here.
100.
100. 5. Anyone else?
3.
3. 4. This is one of the largest companies in the world. If these 4 people were not involved, they were flown around everywhere. The deal wouldn't happen. Ooh. The deal wouldn't happen. All right? So, whether you're a scale-up or you're a large company, the rainmaker dependency, when those criteria are in play, there's a high dependency on a few people, right? And what happens in this scenario, and I've made this mistake as a head of sales, so I'm the first one to admit it, is you keep hiring more and more and more salespeople. The problem with that is the rainmakers' calendars get even more jammed because they now have to hold these salespeople in the hand and coach them, right? If we look at some of the most successful companies in deal orchestration, do you know what they do? They split sales marketing 50-50. So rather than hiring more and more salespeople, they build, and I'm going to explain how they do it, they build a marketing machinery around the stars and help scale them. So you get the effect that I shared with you in the beginning with Jeffrey. Right? We actually think that this is going to become 70-30. This is, don't take that as that's just our own opinion. In the future, this is going to become 70-30, we think. Even more marketing led, with stars being scaled. Okay, so how do you scale the rainmaker? Anybody wants to know? Okay, so there are 4 things. The first one, I'm going to show you examples. But the first one is you need to take away all unnecessary tasks from the rainmaker. It's like the surgeon. No, not the surgeon. No? Bad example? Okay, it's like the surgeon, yeah. So the surgeon goes gloves on, doesn't she? Yeah? And everything else is set. The table is set, the journals are done. Oops. And even the patient is stitched up, right? And then afterwards somebody else does that and she walks out and she just goes into the next operating room and then the next one, right? So take all the unnecessary tasks off. I know salespeople are going, Jeffrey, did you hear that? Take all the unnecessary tasks off me, please. The second thing is, which we're going to talk most about today, is scale the rainmakers through a mix of content and marketing. So you get the effect that I just shared with you in the beginning. So how do we take the stars and we scale them? And so they can, because human alone, it's really impossible to influence all these stakeholders. But if we can take and scale the rainmakers and they can start to influence, kind of like I did with Jeffrey, you get a very powerful effect. And then the 3 and 4 is it's important to understand the team play around orchestration, both your internal organization, but also the client's organization, and then upskill the up-and-coming rainmakers on how to do this. So that was key insight number 1, right? So when you have those conditions, you get the logic of sales and marketing shift from selling and marketing to orchestration, and you get this rainmaker dependency. We've not seen a single exception. And when you do that, just hiring more and more salespeople alone doesn't work. You need sales and marketing to work together to scale the stars, right? So and why is that important? Because a salesperson is close to the client. They know what the client is going through. They understand the market. They know the challenges. They know the issues, but the salespeople can't scale themselves. Marketing has no clue what's going on with the client because they're not involved in the client discussions, but they can scale. So if you get these two to work consistently throughout the whole deal, not just here's a lead, off you go, but you get them to work through the whole deal together, you get an incredibly powerful effect. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Key insight number 2 is there are 2 different types of markets. You have an infinite market. So if you're selling into hundreds and thousands and millions of clients. That's an infinite market. And an infinite market, it's quite normal to cold call. It's quite normal to, email automation. How many in here has got a request on LinkedIn to connect and you say yes, and then it doesn't even take 5 seconds and they start selling you software or something? How many go, yes, I'm going to buy? How many feel I'm engaged? No one, right? But when you have an infinite market, you can do those kind of things because you're trying to generate leads, right? You with me? But if you apply those tactics on a finite market, it's a train wreck. You guys operate in a finite market, as far as I understand from discussions with Jeffrey. You have a defined set of deals and prospects that you want to sign, right, in your markets. And in a finite market, you need to do 2 things. You need to have a high win rate, and you need to have a low BBR, burning bridges rate. BBR. Because when you do these type of classical email outreach, cold calling, what happens? You burn bridges, right? And you can't do that in a finite market. Do you agree with me? Because if you do this in a finite market, coming back to that client is really hard, right? So you need to find other ways of influencing the stakeholders in the ecosystem to engage them, to know who you are, what brand you have, who you are as a person, and what message you're trying to convey. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, 2 key insights. When these 2 insights are in play, we need to, the key thing to take away is we need to start to operate a little differently, all right? And we need to start to orchestrate versus selling and marketing. I'm now going to just share with you the book you have, just the research around the book. So, it's quite amazing. When you take this example of the 17 clients standing for 80% of the business, right? And the 4 people responsible for that 80% of your business, that's you're pretty dependent, right? And nobody's written about it. Isn't that mind-blowing? Until now, that's the first book that actually writes about this. How do you do that? And this came from Christopher, who is one of the authors to the book, a dear friend of mine and also one of the founders of the company. He invented IP targeting. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's the first form of account-based marketing where you target individuals on their IP address. So when you go out on die.se or the Deutsch.de or whatever, I'm sorry, you start seeing ads, right? IP targeting. So he invented IP targeting, right? And when he was doing that for years, his company sold the company later. He was sitting with some of the biggest companies in the world in the war room. The war room is when they get together and brainstorm around how to win the deals. He's probably sat in, I don't know, thousands of war room discussions. And in those discussions, he asked them, this stuff is amazing. Where did you learn this? And they go, it doesn't exist. There is no training. There is no book. There is no nothing. So he started to gather this kind of data. But then he actually made it more serious research and went and interviewed 60 high-performing mega dealers in the Oracles and the SAPs and the Ericssons and the YAS, selling fighter jets of the world, and interviewed them, like deep interviewed them. And the output of those interviews is the book. So how do these really high-performing mega dealers orchestrate deals? That's the output. But the thing he realized was it also differentiates completely from the average salesperson, right? So I really recommend you read it. It's I'm biased, of course, but it's really great insights. And so I'm going to share with you now some of those insights at a high level. So they're I'm going to share the 5 cornerstones with you. So the first cornerstone is what we call align with key initiatives. We had a client of ours, and they worked on a deal for 1.5 years. And after 1.5 years, blood, sweat and tears, you know how it is working on these deals, right? 1.5 years, blood, sweat and tears, they got a pilot. And they were over the moon. The pilot took another 6 to 8 months. right? So now we're almost 2.5 years. And after the pilot, that was, by the way, successful, the company killed the whole deal. Why on earth would you do a pilot for 8 months and then kill the deal? Why? Any thoughts? I see you're about to crack it. No?
I don't know.
Why would you do that? Why would you do a pilot for 8 months and then kill it, not continue?
Must be a good reason.
Yeah, go on.
No, I don't know.
No, but behind you, he's raised his hand. Could be.
Market research.
Could be. You're kind of in the same vicinity. Here's the thing. With these type of deals, if what you're selling is not aligned to the company's key initiatives, you will get deprioritized. You will fall into the low priority trap. Have you ever had that when they go, oh great, I think, love it, call me in 6 months. Anybody? And then you call them in 6 months and they go, yeah, love it, call me in 8. Congratulations, you're in the low priority trap. And with these large deals, because they tend to be complex and expensive, etc., if what you're selling doesn't align to their key initiatives, you probably won't get the deal because they won't prioritize you. And the key initiatives, what are those? So, you have this as well. You have a position A, that's where you are today. Position B is where you want to be in 3 to 5 years. The key initiatives are the initiatives that take the company from A to B over the next 5 years or 3 years or whatever the horizon is. It's those initiatives where they put time, money and resources, where they prioritize the time, money and resources. And if you're not aligned to one of those initiatives, you will get deprioritized. Because like any other company, you as well are looking at a lot of initiatives. You can't invest in all of them, right? So some get taken away. And the other interesting, so these mega dealers were really good at this, but here was an interesting insight with these mega dealers that separated them from the average salesperson. Salespeople, we are trained from early age to get as much in the pipeline as possible, right? Fill the pipeline, and shoot at everything. In the infinite game, that's a good strategy. In the finite game, it's a problem. Why is it a problem? We had the opportunity to work with JAS, Gripen, for those of you who don't know who they are. They do jet planes here, and it was early when we started. They build fighter jets. Do you know how much their sales cycle from meeting a client to getting a sale costs? Anyone want to take a stab?
Yeah.
They haven't even sold a plane yet. What does it cost?
50 million.
50 million SEK.
Yeah, of course.
350 million. Bloody hell. Imagine 10 of those and you don't get a single deal. I'm not saying yours costs 350 million, but my point is, in the finite game with these large deals, right? It takes you spending, you can't do as many of these, you can only do a few and it costs quite a lot. So what these mega dealers were amazing at, they had not a qualification mindset, they had a disqualification mindset. They would go into a deal looking to disqualify. They would look for reasons to not do it. And one of them was, if they didn't align to key initiatives, they're just disqualified. Make sense? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, so once you've qualified the right type of deals, you now need to really understand the ecosystem, right? So who are the stakeholders in the organization that is influencing the deal? Now, when you're selling, how many, when you're selling into for a hospital or a school or something, about how many stakeholders do you think are involved, directly or indirectly, in making a decision like that?
4 or 5 people.
4 or 5? I bet it's more. If you take the indirect. Do they not need to go to someone and then ask someone and then check with someone? And no? 4 or 5, is that about right? You're going like that. Tell me.
A little bit higher.
What do you think?
8, 10.
8, 10. Okay. All right. So first of all, you need to understand who these 5 to 10 are, right? It's really important because you don't know who they are. You can't influence them. The mistake we see a lot of people do is they go, I talked to Eric at Ericsson and he said no. Last I checked, there's 85,000 people working at Ericsson. Eric said no, and that's it, right? So most of the time we see that salespeople talk to too few stakeholders, right? And influence too few stakeholders. But the other thing we saw that was quite striking with these type of deals was that not only did you have stakeholders in the client organization, you had stakeholders outside of the client organization that's influencing the damn deal. Like politicians, right? Lawmakers. It could be consultants. Do you have that? Give me some examples. What would be a stakeholder outside the client organization that's influencing the deal? The municipality, right? No? Yeah. Others?
Parents to school.
Sorry?
Parents to children.
Interesting. Okay. So you need to understand who's influencing the deal. So you need to map that out. If you don't do that, we lost the deal about a year ago. And we're pretty good at this stuff because we hadn't done this. We had almost the whole leadership team around the table on a call, and they went around and they said, do you say yes, yes? Do you say yes, yes? Are you saying yes, yes? We went around the whole table. All of them said yes. And Christopher was on, he said, yeah, got this. And he goes, okay, I'll send the contract then. Go, well, William has to say yes. Will who? Now, our head of Europe. You've got to be kidding me. We completely missed the head of Europe. And he felt we'd gone around him, so he didn't even want to take the meeting. Ever experienced that? I'm going to give you another example. Microsoft. So this was about probably over a year ago. Based on some of the techniques and tactics I'm going to share with you in a minute, we started to see increased activity from Microsoft in Stockholm. They were kind of getting on our website, they were starting to look at our content, they were starting to... So what we did was we took our marketing cannons and we started to target key individuals in the Stockholm office with relevant content, relevant messaging and things like this. A couple of months later, Christopher gets an email from one of the leaders at Microsoft in Stockholm. Hi Christopher, I am blah. And by the way, we actually have a very strong champion based there. She's a mega dealer and a rainmaker. And she works in that organization and she's a big fan of, in fact, she was interviewed in the book. But we've never met them. We've never had any meetings with them. We've never sent them any emails. We've never done any cold calling. We haven't done anything like that. She emails says to Christopher and says, we have tried every other type of marketing to large deals, ABM, account-based marketing and things. None of it's worked. You are our last hope. If you don't, this is exactly what they wrote. If you don't price yourself out, we will work with you. Do you know what else they wrote? Everybody at IBM is talking about you, which isn't true, obviously, right? So Christopher goes there to meet them. And as he's walking through the corridor with one of our colleagues, Tamina, 3 or 4 people says, hello, hi Chris, hi Chris, hi Chris, hi Chris. And Tamina goes, how do you know these people? And he goes, I don't. But they think they know me because they've seen me on different types of content. We call this the Hollywood effect. I know it sounds superficial and really hilarious, but it works. Because when you walk into the meeting, you're almost like this celebrity. I know it sounds, you're like, yeah, really, right. It's like, I'm so glad that you came. It's like my job to sell to you, right? So anyway, he gets into the meeting. Half the leadership team and you can't even get one of the people at Microsoft in Stockholm in the leadership. Half the leadership team is there and they're literally pitching to him about why we should work together. That type of effect is impossible to get without the media effect. Impossible. Make sense? Okay. So this is me 1.0. So this is me doing deals back in the days. I did everything on my own. I was mapping the ecosystem, sending emails, calling, all the kind of stuff that we do, right? And then I was exposed to Christopher and the mega deals discipline, which I've been through my own journey for the last couple of years. And so, and I don't know about you guys, but when you're doing these deals, doesn't it feel a bit like Bruce Willis in Die Hard? You know, when he's crawling through, have you all seen the movie? Yeah. You know, he's crawling through the ventilation shaft and he's got a ripped shirt and he's, yeah. For you that do these deals, doesn't it feel like that sometimes? You're quite alone out there, right? So what we started to do was we started to scale me, right? So scaling me with content, videos, ads, kind of like the example I gave around Jeffrey. Account intelligence and stakeholder mapping. One of the things that really differentiated these mega dealers we interviewed, they had a molecular understanding of their clients, like really understood their clients at a cellular level and understood the whole mapping. And the other thing that marketing leads is the hyper-targeted media. Remember I gave you the examples of Jeffrey and Microsoft, how we were targeting stakeholders and individuals? So marketing does this. What sales does is the traditional sales activities. So this is not a magic pill. You do this stuff and then deals automatically sign. So the Rainmaker needs to do their stuff with the meetings, the on-the-ground orchestration, the sales, all that kind of stuff. But what you also add to this that's incredibly powerful is what we call team-based enterprise social selling. It's using LinkedIn to also influence on top of the hyper-targeted ads. I'm going to give you examples of that. But here's the thing I was talking about before. In an infinite market, the lead generation type of marketing works really well. You generate a lead, I give it to you, off you go and sign. But in this type of an environment, it needs to be deal-centric. So marketing and sales need to work throughout the whole sales cycle. Are you with me? So for our clients, we run what we call land and expand meetings. In the land and expand meeting, marketing will join the salespeople and go through the deals. The salesperson will say, I'm in sales cycle 3, I've gone to sales cycle 4. These are the new stakeholders that have come in. This is the message that needs to get across. Marketing registers, yeah? Next one comes in. Hi, I've now gone from sales cycle 2 to 3. These are the new stakeholders. This is the message. Marketing registers. Because if sales and marketing are working in silos, that doesn't work. That's why a lot of the ABM tools doesn't work, because campaigns that marketing is running and sales is running separately. This is one of the biggest mistakes I made as a head of sales. I ran my account review meetings without marketing. Big mistake. This doesn't work. Make sense? Okay. So this is a bit of a messy slide, but it talks about two things. It talks about sales activation and brand building. So what you want to do with the example I gave around Jeffrey and Microsoft is you both want to create an environment. So take the Jeffrey example. Jeffrey came to a point without me even meeting him where he was ready to engage with me, right? Now he contacted me, but I can also contact him if I know that he's ready to engage. If I can see that on a report and I know he's ready to engage, I can engage with him, right? But the other thing, which is short term, is brand building. So you want to, with these specific individuals, in these stakeholders, in these companies, you want to build your brand, the company's brand, and the message. Yeah? Over time. Okay, so let's talk about how do we do the deal orchestration enablement. So I'm going to share that with you now. So the first thing we do is we do what we call account intelligence. So we map, this is a really like, it's not rocket science, but it takes time, where you gather everything around the client in one report. You know, their annual reports, their YouTube movies, the ads that they're seeing at the moment, and then mapping the ecosystem. And this map gets updated every 2 weeks when you have these meetings because new stakeholders are coming all the time, yeah? The second thing is, you start to, when you create the ads, you start to push these ads and media content on different platforms. So when your stakeholder is on Instagram, when your stakeholder is on Facebook, when your stakeholder is on LinkedIn, when your stakeholder is on YouTube, when your stakeholder is looking at the online newspapers, they're seeing your media content, but also with the relevant message and the relevant hooks, the problems you're solving. And the aim of this is to get them curious. Because Jeffrey, you were curious, right? when you were reading the stuff that we were sending out, you were like, hold on a minute, this sounds familiar, right? If I had done none of that stuff and I would just call Jeffrey out of the blue, do you think I would have got a meeting? Hi, I'm from Mega Deals, we do click. So every time you went out in Anna's house, he would see the ads of the relevant messaging on Instagram and Facebook. Another way that our clients use this is if you're on a conference, right? A big conference, you can geofence the conference. So imagine that we're targeting key people before the conference, so they're seeing your message and the relevant stuff, and then you're in a housing conference or something like this. And then when they're in the conference, they're also seeing the salespeople and the messages and everything. And then after the conference, they're also seeing your stuff. Make sense? And then the final one is retargeting. So there's kind of 4 techniques, and that's when they come to your website, they get a little, it's called a cookie. They go away from your website and they'll start to see your ads on all the platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Meta, etc. Make sense? Okay, so the deal orchestration enablement, once you get this, it's great you're doing this, but you need some data. How do I know that Jeffrey is aware? How do I know that Jeffrey has engaged, right? And so there are 3 things that you do. You want to be able to see, first of all, which deals and who are the stakeholders. You want to see if Jeffrey is aware. Has he seen my stuff? How many times has he seen my stuff? And has Adapteo, as a company, seen my stuff? How many times have they seen my stuff, right? Because if I know that Jeffrey is aware, I can contact him. Make sense? It's better than a cold call. I won't go through this, but actually I'll show you this. So imagine here, can you see this? So these are companies on the left, right? And you can see how many, so the targeted stakeholders is how many people in that company we're targeting. We know this, 19 at the top. I can also see how many days I've been targeting them. I can see how many times they've clicked on an ad and how many impressions they've got per person. And I can start to say they are green, red, yellow. So when we start off they're red, as they start to see more and more and they start to get to Jeffrey's level, they become yellow and green. When they're green, they're ready for a salesperson to contact them. Make sense? And they're not completely cold. And we can even see at individual level. Imagine how cool this is. I know that Michael Lentz, who is the senior VP, has clicked on one of my ads. He's curious. What can I do with that information? What if you knew that one of your most important stakeholders in one of your deals has actually clicked on one of your ads? What would you do? Reach out. Okay, so deal orchestration enablement is about enabling the deal orchestration. So making sure you have the right account intelligence information, but also marketing, so Emma and team, make sure that with hyper-targeted media, we're influencing them with the right message and the right content, right? And then the salespeople have to do number 1, what? Their sales activities, right? So you need to go and do the selling, right? But I want to spend some time on the next piece, which is what we call enterprise social selling. How many here use LinkedIn to post stuff? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, few. Okay. How many here don't use LinkedIn to post stuff? Okay. How many use LinkedIn to find stakeholders specific? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So this is a guy called Peter, and he's been following me on LinkedIn. I post every week, minimum, once. And I posted around the messaging of what we're selling, right? He comments on my post, says, I appreciate this is really cool. So I send him an in-mail, not publicly, but only to him. You're with me, right? So I send him an in-mail. And we start chatting, and he actually says to me, I've been following you, just like I've been following you for 2 years. I think the stuff you're talking about is really relevant, blah, 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 blah. And I say, look, I have some hidden video content that talks about these things. Would you like them? What do you think he said? Yes. Grow your network on LinkedIn with your target accounts. So when you know who your target accounts are, make sure if you have 2 contacts, become 4 contacts, become 6 contacts, become 10 contacts. We had a case with Christopher when selling into a client many, many years ago. They actually got a meeting with him because when they looked at, you know, you can see shared contacts on LinkedIn. They're like, my God, he's connected with more people in my company than me, and he's connected with my boss's boss's boss. I think I have to take a meeting with him. Post regularly around your messaging. Because what clients are doing is, once you start to get them engaged, they're not only seeing your media, they're also starting to read your posts. For those of you who use LinkedIn, do you use it that way? No? Who does use it that way? Who posts regularly? You do. Give love is what I just explained. So it's using LinkedIn to send stuff and to talk to them on the side, share content and get the meetings. And do it as a team. Why is it important to do it as a team?
Higher reach.
Higher reach, absolutely, 100%.
Send out the same message.
Send out the same message.
Make sure everybody does it.
Yeah. We had a conversation, this was a while ago, and we were at this event, and we were talking to one of the senior people of one of the that we're targeting, and they said, my God, you must have like 50 people in your marketing organization.
Show force.
We're only 1 or 2, right? You look like you're much bigger than what you actually are when you're doing this as a team. It's incredibly powerful. Make sense? So, post regularly. Here's a post. I've taken some examples. I posted about the finite infinite game. 12,000 impressions. I don't know how many likes there are. But you can get great data. So I can see which companies are viewing. I can see how big are the companies. I can see tons of stuff. So you get I mean, how long would it take for you as individuals to get 12,400 people to see a message if you're doing this just by, I know it doesn't close a deal, I get it, but it's insane, right? Don't stare too much on the likes. I don't think Jeffrey has liked a single post I've done, but he's still engaged. So it's not about just getting likes, it's about getting your right message in front of the right people through different media. Make sense? This is a wonderful example. This is a trick you can do straight away. Take this one and start doing it. It's absolutely mind-blowing and it works. Melissa is one of our dear colleagues. She's writing about a sustainability scale-up. The only thing she's done is she's gone in and written about them. Nothing sophisticated. And heightened them and said they're doing an amazing job in the sustainability space. And she's tagged the CEO, Edward. This company has no clue who we are. She posts this. The COO comments. The CEO comments. Now we're on their radar. The only thing we did was write about them and we tagged them. And we said, you guys are doing an amazing job in the sustainability field. Nothing more. We don't call them afterwards and go, buy my stuff. Just leave it alone. But I'm on their radar. Make sense? Start doing this tomorrow. I mean, this is such an amazing way to get on their radar. But don't start selling straight away. Right? But you get the point of this. Right? Like, when you force someone to say a yes or a no, a cold call, an automated email, campaigns, and especially if you're a bit unknown, what happens? They tend to go towards no, right? But if you don't force them to say a no, you start to court them and caress them with relevant content and giving them content, seeing the right message at the right time over time, you get a complete different impact. First of all, LinkedIn's algorithms are changing all the time, so it's very hard to kind of like, tomorrow they'll change something. But if you want to get the best impact, it's rewriting the post yourself. Because when you repost, the algorithms are really poor. Yeah? You'll check it out. If you look at your post, you'll have much more engagement than if you repost it, right? So, because LinkedIn wants you to incentivize you to post stuff, not repost stuff all the time, right? So if you really want to get a better outreach, take the same post, reword it, and just post it again. Make sense? And comments always is more powerful. Let me give you a tip. Create a chat. You probably have a chat already, like WhatsApp or Slack or whatever. And when somebody's post, put that post into the chat. If many of you within the hour comment on that post, it goes viral. Make sense? So that's kind of a little trick that you can take with you. Any other questions on what I've taught? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done any research on the thin line between targeting and burning bridges?
Explain.
When you go from you're targeting quite aggressively, when you go from that to burning bridges.
Good, great question. So there's a big difference when you're targeting in the consumer world versus the B2B world. I'm really happy you asked this. Thank you. Have you ever experienced this? You go into a shop online and you look at a shoe. You get out of that and you get like 1 billion, right? They spam the hell out of you with that shoe. Why do they do that? They do that because your window for buying is really short. Are you with me? Like you either get them or they're like, oh, sod it, right? In the B2B environment, the window of buying is long. It takes months. Are you with me? So when we do the targeting, we already today make sure that a person doesn't see it more than 2 times in one day. And they see a variety of ads. One of the things that we do, it's called a pitch video or an explainer video. And what we do is, I think, Jeffrey, you saw that I sent it to you before our meeting. So you can actually use video where you almost take away the first meeting. It's really powerful. So you have a pitch video is about 3 to 4 minutes. It's your messaging very short, and then the explainer video could be 10 to 15, right? And if they're engaged enough, if they've seen all your content and they've read your stuff and all that kind of stuff, they will watch the video. Did you watch the video? Thank God you said yes, otherwise I'd been up shit creek, right? And what do? You actually take away the first meeting. So you don't have to go into we're Adapteo and what we do is this and we do that and this is how we position ourselves, etc. You go straight into the meeting and you're actually meeting 2, yeah? It's a really powerful way to scale. And what happens after a first meeting when they're interested? What do they usually say? I need to bring in Sarah and John and Stina, right? And what do you do with that video before that meeting? You send it to Sarah, John and Stina. Because otherwise you have a problem. You're coming into meeting number 2, well, one of them are completely on board and the other 2 have no clue what you're about. So it's like, how do you... So, very powerful way of scaling. It's about the Iron Woman suit in your case. It's how do you scale through hyper-targeted media, and videos is a very powerful way to do that. Love it. Great example. Why should 70% of the posts you do have you on it, especially if you're customer facing?
Because they recognize you.
Exactly. Because what you're doing is you're building. First of all, you get the Hollywood effect. I promise you it works. Test it. I know it sounds very superficial, but it actually does work. But the other thing is the mind works in funny ways. So what you're doing is you're anchoring thought leadership to you, yeah? So it's anchoring, it's right? So you're anchoring you with the thought leadership you're building. Make sense? Really important. I'm not saying leads generation is wrong. First of all, leads generation in an infinite market is the way. It's brilliant, right? But when it comes to the large deals, I bet you most of the salespeople in here know which deals they should be going after. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I don't think there's many deals in Norway where you kind of go, oh, hadn't thought about that one, right? Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, there will be new leads, right? But if I can help you close deals by influencing, both mapping and influencing that. So if you can help him by mapping and influencing week in, week out, and you get the Microsoft and the Jeffrey effect, that's much more powerful in the finite game on large deals than generating leads. One thing that we work with our clients is how do we move them towards category dominance? How do they become the number one in that category? Because when you are number one in the category, you enjoy 76% of the shareholder value. Not revenue, shareholder value. That's why companies like Apple are, bathing in money. We look at it from A to B to C. So where are you today? Where do you need to be in a year? And where do you need to be in 3 years? And we look at it from category dominance and revenue. And category dominance is about, I don't have time to go through all of it today, but you can see some KPIs on the right-hand side. But how do you increase your network in these targeted accounts, right? How do you see that your website visits are increasing with these targeted accounts? How many of the biggest brands in the industry are you starting to win so that other people are looking at you going, oh, these guys are definitely the category leaders? Yeah? How are website visits increasing? So how are you intentionally growing based on your top 50? Like, these are the top 50 deals. If we start to win these, we will be the category leader. And how do we eat into those? Like, that's the heat map. How are we eating in with first-hand contacts? All that kind of stuff. And then what's the next 100 to 150 accounts that we need to start to win? And then adding KPIs around how we're eating our ways in. And if you do that in a systematic way, you move towards category dominance. And category dominance is a very favorable position to be in. Make sense? Okay, so the final thing I'm going to end up with is this is the last thing I'm going to go through. And it plays to your point. So the two of you were actually on this with talking less about the product, and you were kind of like, I don't know what to write about, remember? You said, oh, right. So before we go into this model, let me just share something with you. This model is something that Christopher has come up with. I've been in sales and marketing for over 25, 30 years. I've been doing large deals for over 20 years. This is one of the most genius things I've seen anyone come up with. It's absolutely brilliant. What the framework says, we call it fundamental messaging. What the framework says is, at the bottom you have why this vendor, product. So I could wake up probably anyone in the middle of the night and you could all tell me about the benefits and features of your product. Am I right? Product, right? But the problem is, if you only talk about your product, what happens? What happens when you're only talking about your product?
People carry from there to...
They get lost because every other competitor is talking about that damn product and they're saying pretty much the same thing. So what differentiates you, right? The other thing is the mind can't handle, the most genius people in the world can handle 5 attributes at once. Most of us probably handle between 3 and 4. So if I run a 50 list feature list for a client, they're like, they're looking at 2, they're looking at your competitor and they're like, oh, I don't know, I have no clue, right? At the top you have change drivers. Those who only talk about their product tend to get the worst results. You have the next step, which is they say change drivers is the problem you're solving. So again, please take this as a pinch of salt. I'm not an expert in your world, but probably some of the things that your clients are struggling with is this kind of becoming more sustainable, right? Another one is probably costs that are going through the roof at the moment when it comes to construction and things like this, right? So what some companies say, here's the problem, here's my solution. The problem with that in mega deals, that's not how senior decision people make decisions. They don't say, here's my problem, oh, I'll go to Adapteo. They look at what we call categories and subcategories of solutions. They evaluate. If this is my problem, what are my different categories of solutions that I evaluate? Right? Yep. And let's say, John gave me a crash course while I was sitting at lunch, so I hope I'm half right. It seems to be that there are 3 categories your clients are evaluating. right? At least in Norway, if I'm right. So they're either saying, I'll go into I'll rent an already ready establishment, right? Or build, construct, which takes 3 or 4 years, right? Or the modular category. Am I right? There's probably more, but just as you get the point, right? Now, and then let's say you convince them to pick modular. Let's forget about Adapteo for a minute. You were telling me there are subcategories of modular, right? So what was it? It was
School, kindergarten, office, and so on.
there was like expensive versus cheap.
Oh, yeah. Some cheaper one and some
Okay, so that's
premium.
it. Go ahead. Now, let's say your client has picked the category of renting a existing establishment. You come in guns blazing with your product. How do you think that's going to go? How do you think that's going to go? The reason that's not going to work is because they've picked a different category choice. Because that's how decisions are made in these type of deals. They evaluate, this is my problem, what are my different category options? Should I go down a current place? Should I build? Should I do modular? If I pick modular, what types of modulars do I have? Then they come down to, okay, so based on these type of modulars, who are the vendors? Make sense? So in these type of deals, in your content and messaging, whether you're sitting in a meeting or it's digital content, you need to understand this. Because if you're in that meeting and they've picked construct or they've picked the other category, you don't talk about your product. You influence them on why picking that category doesn't help them reach the problems that they're struggling with. So you're positioning out categories and subcategories. Is this making sense? Yeah. This is number one. Number two, you see on the right-hand side, you have the owners and the board at the top, and then you have Stefan at the bottom. A lot of salespeople, when they walk into a senior executive room, they are very uncomfortable talking on the top half of this. They're very uncomfortable talking about, here are the big problems and challenges in your industry, here are different category choices, this is why this category choice doesn't make sense, think about this category choice. What do most salespeople feel comfortable? I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying in general. Talking about their product and showing a demo. Remember I said about the mind, it can only handle 5. We don't want feature lists. One thing the mind handles is buckets, contrasting buckets. You want to contrast modular with another. I'll give you a great example. Mark Benioff, Salesforce. You know him? CEO. When he came out into the market, do you remember what he did? Genius. Can you imagine if he'd gone out with Salesforce against Microsoft and all these guys and started talking about benefits and features? There wouldn't be a Salesforce today. Do you agree? Get crushed. What did he do? Do you remember? It's amazing. He created 2 contrasting buckets. Do you remember what they were? He talked about on-prem versus cloud. On-prem versus cloud. Do you want an on-prem solution? And then he talked about why the on-prem solution actually doesn't help companies solve the problems that they have and what causes nightmare. Or do you want to go into the cloud? And he kept banging on-prem cloud, on-prem cloud, on-prem. And he had this no software thing. Do you remember? He did this kind of thing and he said no software. Genius. Rather than talking about feature lists, which he would have been whacked, he was using the category choices as buckets. Make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Jeffrey? Yes. So time is up.
Yes.
Daniela and I want to thank you for having us and for putting up with us for an hour and a half. I hope it was useful, or at least some of it was useful. I really hope there are things that you can take with you and start thinking about as you're back into your day-to-day stuff. Daniela and I wish you all the very, very best, and we'll be really looking forward now to following you on your journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you.